This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight Now, we bring you a discussion on India-Nepal ties. The participants are Ranjit Ray, former diplomat, and Sanjay Jha, journalist.
Nepal and India enjoy excellent bilateral ties founded on the age-old connection of history, culture, tradition and religion. These relations are close, comprehensive and multidimensional and are pronounced more in political, social, cultural, religious and economic engagement with each other. As close neighbors, India and Nepal share unique ties of friendship and cooperation characterized by an open border and deep-rooted people-to-people contacts of kinship and culture. There has been a long tradition of free movement of people across the border. Nepal shares a long boundary of 1,850 kilometers with 5 Indian states, Sikkim, West Bengal, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh and Uttarakhand. Ambassador Ray, how do you see India and Nepal relations in the modern context?
See, we have very ancient relations and at the same time we have very modern progressive relations. Our ancient relations are based on people-to-people linkages. We have marriages that take place between Nepal and India. We have religious and cultural similarities. We have open borders and these borders have always been open. So we have a very close, I would say even intimate relationship. In the modern period, I think both our countries have young people. There are youthful aspirations. Both our countries want to develop rapidly. So the focus of our relationship today is on strengthening the economic engagement and cooperation between our two countries, whether it is in terms of development of hydropower, development of infrastructure, development of tourism between the two countries. So you can say that these age-old relations are now being reinvigorated and re-strengthened, deepened, enhanced in the modern context through our economic partnership.
Building on shared Hindu and Buddhist civilizational heritage, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will again reach out to Nepal when he lands at Lumbini, the birthplace of Prince Siddhartha, who became Buddha after enlightenment in Bodh Gaya in India. Prime Minister's visit to Lumbini only for a few hours on Monday, where he is going to meet Nepal Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deva. This is going to be the second meeting in a little over a month. Last month we saw Prime Minister Deva visiting India and going around the country. How do you see this important visit of Prime Minister Modi to Lumbini?
So this demonstrates the fact that our relationship is so close and so important for both countries. In 2 months, we have 2 high-level visits between India and Nepal. The visit to Lumbini is very significant. In all his previous visits, you recall, Prime Minister has been there on 4 official visits to Nepal and he has really reinvigorated the relationship. This is now the 5th visit to Lumbini, the birthplace of Prince Siddhartha. And Lord Buddha is somebody who really connects Nepal with India. He was born in Nepal, but his enlightenment, his preaching, and his death happened in India. And there are millions of followers of Buddhism in the whole world, and especially in Asia, who want to travel to these places, who want to follow in the footsteps of the Buddha in all these places, in Lumbini, in Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, Kushinagar, Nalanda, Rajgir. So I think the Prime Minister's visit will demonstrate the importance of Buddhism in the relationship between the two countries and the need to develop this Buddhist circuit for pilgrims from all over the world. And I think there is also a political or strategic dimension to the visit. There is China, which is also Nepal's neighbor, has been actively trying to exploit the soft power potential of Buddhism. And they have invested in Lumbini in a big way. They have constructed a very big monastery. They sponsor conferences on Buddhism. So I think the Prime Minister's visit to Lumbini demonstrates that this is a very important aspect of India's foreign policy, of India's relationship with Nepal. I think for the future, it demonstrates that India will focus on developing of these religious, spiritual, and cultural linkages, not only vis-a-vis India-Nepal relationship, but also in terms of India's relationship with Southeast Asia, East Asia, and Northeast Asia.
Absolutely. One of the noble manifestations of India's soft power initiative is sustainable cultural diplomacy. Buddhism is a crucial component of it due to its historical significance. India is applying the principles of Sanskriti Evam Sabhyata, culture and civilizational link, desiring to leverage its old age rich cultural links with other countries as part of its non-coercive soft power strategy. And the Buddhist faith, we know that it sort of developed in India and then it went around all over the world, especially Southeast Asia, as you mentioned, and Nepal is where he was born. So, and Buddhist faith teaches us an emphasis on peaceful coexistence and its wide pan-Asian presence lend itself well to soft power diplomacy. We saw last month Nepali Prime Minister Syed Bahadur Deuba's three-day visit between April 1st to 3rd, and it was sort of a mixed bag. We saw some progress in some issues that were uppermost on his agenda, and it was his first visit abroad since becoming Prime Minister last year. In the previous Prime Minister's tenure, India and Nepal had a bit of problem, in terms of bilateral relations. Do you think now Prime Minister Modi's visit and his personal equation with Deva will try and ease that tension?
I think the tension has eased up. And the tension is not surprising or unusual. When you have two neighboring countries with asymmetric size and very close, intimate relationships, there are bound to be issues and problems that come up. After all, in any family or even between friends, you sometimes have difficulties. But there are ways and means of resolving these difficulties. And I think that is what we are trying to do between India and Nepal. And I think in this context, the relationship between the top leaders of India and Nepal is very critical and across the board with all political leaders in Nepal. And I think that is why it is so important that we should have this regular interaction between top level political leaders and also not only the top level youth leaders and others to create more understanding, mutual trust and overall a better relationship, because this is the glue that binds the relationship between two countries. So certainly the Prime Minister's visit to Lumbini is a very important step in this direction.
We saw Nepal's relation with India have been on a low ebb for last few years. There has been little high-level communication between the two countries in recent years. Moreover, Nepal is also caught in the middle of a geopolitical tussle between China and the United States. And there are several outstanding issues in India-Nepal relations that require immediate attention. You have served in Nepal as an ambassador. Could you tell us what are the outstanding issues which is crippling our relationship, or it can probably be broad-based more by resolving those issues?
See, I personally feel the fundamental issues relate to our economic engagement and partnership. And these are issues, for instance, of the development of hydropower projects. Big issue like the Pancheshwar hydropower project has been stuck for 25 years. This has been revived on several occasions, and most recently during Prime Minister Deuba's visit, there was a special mention of the need to work and move ahead quickly on this project. Of course, the Nepalese side raises certain issues. They don't like the 1950 Treaty of Friendship with India. They have also precipitated the boundary issue by drawing a new map of India, and India has been very critical of this development. In the past, there was an eminent persons group that was supposed to look at the relationship. That report has not been accepted. So there are some of these issues that remain. And as I said, all these issues have to be resolved through dialogue and negotiation and through mutual give and take. But this should not detract from the importance that we attach to our overall partnership, whether it is development of infrastructure, whether it is development of hydropower, whether it is engagement in the financial sector. During Prime Minister Deuba's visit, agreement that the Indian RuPay card would also be valid in Nepal. So all this work must go on.
China's growing role in Nepal has been a concern for India, and that has also had implications on our bilateral relations. During the monarchy, China maintained a link with the palace, and its concerns were primarily related to keeping tabs on Tibetan refugee community. But with the evolution of monarchy, China has shifted attention to its political parties and to institutions such as the army and armed police force, and consider Nepal an important element in its growing South Asian footprint. So we have seen India's relations, because of Chinese growing influence, also having issues. Do you think now the Prime Minister Modi's visit and Prime Minister of Nepal's visit to India, that will try and repair on this Chinese side?
First point I want to make is that India-Nepal relationship is so strong, so widespread, it covers the entire spectrum of human endeavor. So no third country can substitute for India in this relationship. Having said that, there is no doubt that Chinese role, influence, presence in Nepal is increasing over the years. And this is not only in terms of the economic initiatives, Nepal is party to the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese have constructed several airports. They are engaged in some hydropower projects. Chinese President Xi Jinping visited Nepal in 2019, a visit after 23 years. China has been actively engaged in trying to unify the communist parties of Nepal. So Chinese role has certainly increased. And I think this is something that India needs to factor into while making its own strategy and policy. And the second aspect, and you referred to this in your earlier question, is the geopolitics. And we have seen how global geopolitics and the contestation for influence between United States and China is playing out in Nepal. Nepal, there was a lot of resistance to a $500 million grant project from the USA, and there were rumors that it is the Chinese that were behind it. Anyway, finally, this project has been passed. So India has to observe very carefully not only the growing Chinese involvement in Nepal, but also the US-China interaction that is taking place in Nepal. Nepal is a country with open borders with India, and obviously anything that happens there has major implications from India. So India must certainly take these factors into account.
2019, then Prime Minister Mr. K.P. Oli, facing domestic opposition within his party, needed a distraction and found one in the form of Kalapani boundary issue. So for the first time, we saw India and Nepal really having bickering over the boundary issue. And these boundaries had been fixed in 1860 by the British, and India inherited the areas over which the British had exercised territorial control in 1947. Almost 90% of the India-Nepal boundary is demarcated except two areas, Susta and Kalapani, which remained in limbo. And in November 2019, India issued the new maps following the division of the state of Jammu Kashmir and Union Territory. And then suddenly Nepal started reacting. Why was that?
My sense is that Nepal started reacting because Prime Minister Oli was under domestic political pressure within his own party. So he thought that raising this boundary issue is a godsend for him. It will unify the people around him. He will once again be the tallest nationalist leader. So he went on and proposed that constitutional amendment, which was then endorsed. Now, the problem we face, the boundary between India and Nepal, incidentally, 98% of it has already been agreed. It's only 2% which is Kalapani and Susta. Now, the problem we face in negotiating with Nepal, if we negotiate some agreement with Nepal on the boundary, where is the guarantee that this settlement or this draft settlement will be endorsed by two-thirds majority in the Nepalese parliament? And this is the big problem we face. I think to have adopted a constitutional amendment with two-thirds majority has made it very difficult for any government of Nepal to negotiate with India, because India would want some assurance, some surety that whatever settlement we negotiate must be endorsed by the parliament. So this is the problem. But as I said, that, all these issues have to be resolved through dialogue and negotiation. There is no other way of resolving these issues.
One of the area which you mentioned, earlier is the energy trade between two countries. Energy trade is mutually beneficial to both countries. And the trade enables Nepal to sell the surplus energy it produces and opens up an opportunity for it to reduce the trade deficit with India. Do you think this is an unprecedented opportunity which needs to be capitalized, needs to be expanded for mutual benefit and robust bilateral cooperation in the power sector?
As far as I know, India has now allowed almost 360 megawatts of Nepalese electricity to be sold on the Indian spot market or the Indian Energy Exchange, which means that, Nepal will get market prices. And India is, for instance, suffering from such a heat wave this time. And Nepal is surplus in energy during the monsoon months. So at peak times when we have huge demand for energy, Nepal can supply the energy to India and also benefit. So this is a win-win situation.
Absolutely. As India moves away from coal, it is searching for a massive supply of clean and renewable energy. In this context, the additional supply from Nepal could help India bridge the gap, and that will also bolster our bilateral relation between two countries. Ambassador Ray, thank you very much for participating in this discussion.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on India-Nepal ties. The participants were Ranjit Ray, former diplomat, and Sanjay Jha, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app, News on AIR. This program is also available on our YouTube channel News on AIR Official.